Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in the video today, and today we're going to be previewing the Houston Texans Week 1 matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, as tomorrow the Houston Texans play their first game of the 2023 season, playing the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore at 12 o'clock on CBS. Houston Texans are going to have a tough challenge in Week 1 tomorrow against the Baltimore Ravens, who are going to be a great team in the AFC this season. They have a couple injuries that, a couple starters on defense, offensive line, some terrible injuries on the offensive line as well. And injuries are going to kill the Texans in this Week 1 matchup. I would have thought there was a chance for the Houston Texans to maybe win this ball game this week against the Baltimore Ravens for some reasons, for the Ravens having a couple of injuries to their defense and their offense. And also this being a little bit of a new system for Lamar Jackson, some new faces with Odell Beckham Jr. and Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman also, coming back from season-ending injury, a new offense coordinator as well. But the Texans have a lot of new faces as well on the coaching staff and players as well. And they have injuries, and so do the Ravens. And this is a road game. This is not a home game for the Texans. But let's go over some of the Texans' injuries that they're going to be dealing with. C.J. Stroud is missing 3 out of the 5 starting offensive linemen in his first game as the starting quarterback. That is not a good sign for C.J. Stroud in his first game. Juice Scruggs, hamstring injury. He's on IR. Also, Titus Howard is on IR and will be out till Week 5 with a hand injury. Kenyon Green is going to be out for the season. He's left guard. Right tackle, Titus Howard. Left guard, Kenyon Green. And then the one I went over first, which is Juice Scruggs as the center. So 3 of the 5 starting offensive linemen are all on IR, and 1 will be out for the rest of the season for these Houston Texans. You also have safety Jimmy Ward, who is our starting strong safety, is out for the Houston Texans tomorrow. And also Blake Cashman, starting linebacker, is out. Wide receiver John Mechie is out. Hamstring injury for Blake Cashman and John Mechie, and a hip injury for Blake Cashman. Punter Cameron Johnson is on IR, reserve for the Houston Texans as well. Durango Baloye, 4th-string running back, is questionable tomorrow with a hamstring injury. And Charlie Heck, a tackle and guard, is also out for the Houston Texans tomorrow, also an IR. So lots of injuries to this Houston Texans team. Let's go over some injuries for the Baltimore Ravens. All right, so they have Marlon Humphrey, amazing cornerback, is out tomorrow. That should be good for the Houston Texans wide receiver group. You have Mark Andrews, star tight end, being questionable. Odell Beckham Jr. is questionable and is doubtful. Mainly is doubtful to play. The Ravens have a couple other smaller injuries in their offense and defense. But so Texans have some terrible they have some terrible injuries to the offensive line. They have a couple injuries to the defense as well, with Blake Cashman and Jimmy Ward, a couple to the offense, and Durango Baloye and John Mechie. So C.J. Stroud, how is he going to be in his first NFL game as the Houston Texans starting quarterback when he is missing 3 of his starters on the offensive line? He only has 2 of them in Larry Tunsil and Shaq Mason. Now he has some decent replacements. The Texans starting replacements tomorrow will be Michael Dieter, Josh Jones, and George Fant. Those are some solid replacements for the starters that will be out tomorrow for the Houston Texans on the offensive line, but it's not as good as the guys that are out. And I think the Texans, that could really hurt not only C.J. Stroud in his rookie debut, not having 3 of his starters on the offensive line for the first 4 weeks of the season, but it not only can it hurt C.J. Stroud, but it might also hurt running back Dameon Pierce, who I would have thought would have had a big game if the Houston Texans had their offensive linemen in Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, and Titus Howard in Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. I think Pierce should still have a really good game. I think he'll get about 60 rushing yards. I even have him having a touchdown. I think he'll be a little bit more effective in the pass game as well for the Houston Texans. I think he'll get about 30 receiving yards and 60 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown. That's not a bad first game for Dameon Pierce. I've seen a lot of people think Dalton Schultz is going to be, a big part of this Week 1 game for the Houston Texans. I don't think he will. I think Dalton Schultz will be a big part of this offense for the Houston Texans this season, and I think he'll be a great weapon for C.J. Stroud. He'll probably get the most targets this season for the Texans, but I think you're going to be seeing a lot of blocking from Dalton Schultz in this game tomorrow with some offensive line troubles, and the Texans probably they're going to be passing the ball a lot tomorrow, a good part of it. But I think they're going to mostly be running the ball tomorrow. So I think you're going to see not a lot from Dalton Schultz, where I've been seeing a lot of people say that Dalton Schultz is going to have a huge impact for this game for the Houston Texans. He might have a big impact, but I don't think it's going to be in receiving. It's going to be in blocking and maybe having a couple decent first down or third down catches. But that's what I think you're going to see from Dalton Schultz in week 1. I'm excited to see what we see from wide receiver Tank Dell in his rookie debut. He's going to face off against a really good safety in Kyle Hamilton. If Tank Dell gets hot early on, they're most likely going to go ahead and put Kyle Hamilton, who was a first-round pick in last year's draft, on the rookie Tank Dell, which will be a tough matchup for Tank Dell. But I'm excited to see how Nico Collins and Robert Woods, other wide receivers, take care in tomorrow's game. How do they take advantage of Marlon Humphrey, cornerback, being out? So Nico Collins or Robert Woods, whoever is playing wide receiver 1 for the Texans tomorrow, is going to match up against the cornerback 2 with Marlon Humphrey out with the foot injury for the Baltimore Ravens. So I think that should be very interesting to watch. But I just feel like CJ Stroud might struggle a little bit in his rookie debut with some new adjustments to the offensive line, and obviously being his rookie debut. I think this coaching staff might struggle a little bit in this first game. I think it's going to be all about nerves in this first game for not only the rookies and CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, and Will Anderson Jr., but it's also going to be about nerves. And I think that you got DeMeco Ryan's first game as the head coach, and you got Bobby Slowick's first game as the offensive coordinator, CJ Stroud's first game as the quarterback, and Will Anderson's first game as the star defensive end. There's going to be a lot of nerves in this week 1 game, and I think the Houston Texans might have to deal with that early on in this game and probably the whole game, especially this being a road game. I think this Texans offense might struggle a lot. I think this defense is going to keep them in the ball game, though. I think their defense is going to be really capable in this game tomorrow. I think their defense will come up with definitely one, but I think 1 or 2 takeaways this defense has tomorrow. I'm thinking a interception for this defense. I think Lamar slips up and throws an interception. I'm thinking the interception will go to either Steven Nelson or Jalen Petrie, and then the Houston Texans maybe get a fumble recovery, but I don't know. I don't think maybe a fumble recovery happens. Maybe J.K. Dobbins slips up and loses the ball, but I think the Texans get an interception tomorrow, and either Jalen Petrie or Steven Nelson gets the pick. But I think that maybe a fumble recovery happens if one of our defensive linemen just crushes J.K. Dobbins. Maybe he loses the ball. So I think the Texans they'll get at least 1 takeaway tomorrow, but maybe 2. I think this Texans defense will keep this game going. But you need your off. If the defense is doing their part, the offense needs to do their part as well. I think that might be a little bit of struggle in this week 1 opponent for the Texans. And I think it's just going to all depend on how the game goes. But I think it's going to be really interesting. Let's go over some starters for the Texans. Let's go over the projected starters for the Houston Texans. At quarterback, CJ Stroud, of course. Wide receivers, Robert Woods and Nico Collins. Running back, Dameon Pierce. And then fullback, Andrew Beck. Tight end, Dalton Schultz. And then your offensive line at left guard will be... you'll see Josh Jones at left guard, and then at left tackle, Laremy Tunsil, of course. Center will be either Michael Dieter or Jarrett Patterson. At right guard will be Shaq Mason, and at right tackle will be George Fant for this offensive line. For this defense, the defensive line will be Will Anderson Jr., Jerry Hughes at the defensive ends, and then at the defensive tackles will be Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins. With Jimmy Ward, the safeties will be Eric Murray and Jalen Petrie, second-year safety, and the corners will be Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley Jr., and your nickel will be Tavier Thomas. That should be what the starters look like tomorrow for the Houston Texans. And getting into my final prediction for tomorrow, I think the Houston Texans lose this game, but I think it is a close one. I think the Houston Texans lose 26-17. I think C.J. Stroud throws a touchdown pass and throws, if not 200 passing yards, very near. I think he'll throw for the area of 190 to 205 passing yards in tomorrow's game. Like I said, I think the run game will be dominant, so that might mean less passing yards for CJ, but I think he throws a touchdown pass, and I'm going to say he throws a touchdown pass to to Tank Dell in their rookie debuts. And I think Dameon Pierce gets a touchdown on the run, and the Houston Texans get a field goal. But I think the Houston Texans might turn the ball over at least once or twice. This is a great Ravens defense. Linebacker core, you got Roquan Smith, David Ajabo, and you got Jadeveon Clowney, who's going to be playing a little bit of linebacker and defensive end, and some other solid players on this Ravens defense. This is a really underrated Ravens defense, and they might have a good day against this Texan. They might have a really good day against this Houston Texans offense, but I hope not. I think the Texans possibly could get an upset, but I really doubt it with the Texans missing 3 starting offensive linemen, and not only that, but this being a debut for a rookie quarterback and defensive end, start offensive end, and head coach and offensive coordinator, their first games as head coach and offensive coordinator. I think the Texans will keep this close and might come close to a win. Might look like they're going to win at times, but then the Ravens pull out with the win. You guys let me know your thoughts on the game for the Houston Texans tomorrow. That's it for the preview and the video, and peace out. Go Texans.